This ZeroNow program is brought to you with the support of our founding partners.
I'm just one person.
Determined
to bring us back to zero.
I'm just one person.
Determined
to bring us back to zero.
I am just one person.
Determined to bring us back to zero.
Hi, my name is Jillian. I am a student correspondent for ZeroNow. I am here with Bob Jensen. Mr. Jensen has 38 years of experience with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. He has worked as the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary. He's worked with FEMA and similar organizations like that. And most recently, he has founded Strat3, a crisis management company. As a college student living in a time of a pandemic and uncertainty, I think it is so important to kind of adapt and teach and bring this to our everyday lives, especially in my generation and the future generations, especially what you've created and founded in Strat3. So I think it's really important to talk about what inspired you to start Strat3 and why did you get involved in crisis management?
Well, let me start with the second question first. I got involved with crisis management essentially when I was with the Department of Defense. And I was sent over to the war zones in Iraq and Afghanistan. I did 4 deployments to war zones, and that's pretty much a crisis. And a lot of what I did was the communication part, telling the American public, also talking to the Iraqi public and the global public about what we were doing and why we were doing it. Why was it necessary for us to be involved in this war? In addition to that, when I got out of Afghanistan, I was recruited into FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and it was kind of a nice change because I had been overseas quite a bit, and it was time to be back in the States. But disaster zones can be just as crazy and hectic and even dangerous as a war zone sometimes, depending on what the situation is. And communication is super important in a disaster zone. Getting information out before, during, and after a disaster happens can mean the difference between people living or dying. Can mean the difference between people understanding where to go to get assistance, to find shelter, to get food. And so it's a really critical part of disaster management. When I left government after 32 years, I wasn't ready to stop doing work, and so I decided, what is it I wanted to do? And I recognized that globally, due to a lot of different things, growing populations, climate change, many other things that are driving things happening in the world, we're seeing an increase in the number of extreme weather events and disasters around the world. So I thought, well, I've got experience in this, and I decided to start a consulting firm working with different groups like the World Bank and with countries directly and large international organizations to work with them on their crisis management and crisis communication programs.
So with that being said, what would you personally change within our school communities to put these plans into place and make our communities more safer?
Yes, so student safety, that's a critical priority for our society today. And there's so many issues that students, parents, schools, law enforcement, and communities are facing. Active shooter, increase in drug overdoses, sexual harassment, and of course today's pandemic challenges that everyone is dealing with right now. So keeping students safe requires a coalition of organizations from both the public and private sector, as well as students and their families. So the students are an important part. I just want to emphasize that. But the point is the schools themselves can't do it by themselves. There's no way. They don't have the expertise or the technology or even the funding to do it. So it has to be this kind of coalition because the problems that we're dealing with aren't necessarily starting in the schools. So, for example, drug overdoses, that's not because of the schools. That's happening in society. Sexual harassment or bullying, those types of things, that's a societal issue, right? It's happening, in the schools, but it's also happening outside of the schools. So these issues kind of overlap. So you really need to have a kind of a coalition of all these different groups that are looking at how do we address these issues in the school and outside of the school and with the people who actually make a difference. Parents make a difference. The students have to take some responsibility on their own, and today's young people are really involved. I think it's really great how young people today are looking for answers and looking for information. And then the communication of what's going on, that's really, really critical, although communication is, again, just one part of a larger strategy. One of the biggest challenges today is making sure that you get the right information across. We've seen that communication has changed over the past 2 decades. The way we communicate and where and how we get information has changed radically. First there was the internet and then social media. This has revolutionized communication. Traditional media is losing audience share. Most young people don't watch the evening news or read a newspaper. They're getting their information on their smartphones. And so any group, whether it's a school or it's law enforcement or it's the community or it's parents, they have to look at the technology that's available and how do we use the technology to get the information across in the right kind of words and way in which the people who need it are going to get it. So, and I want to kind of talk a little bit more about technology, because technology is really a big part of the ZeroNow effort. But technology is a double-edged sword. It can be used for both good and bad. An example of how it can be used for bad is, the massive increase in disinformation being disseminated across social media. And that's one way it's used in a bad way. There's a lot of good ways, too. For example, today, the public actually has more access to information than it ever had in the history of humankind, right? And so it's a lot of stuff out there that can be used for good. And technology right now, whether you're using a public alert system or you're looking at technology that can detect if someone is bringing a gun into school, this is all great ways that technology can help. And so I want to talk about an effective crisis communication program that's part of the bigger strategy. And that requires not just the right plan and the right messages, as I said before, but also requires a robust and adaptable system to deliver the messages to the right people at the right time and in the right way to reach them. Right? So it has to not just say, we're going to put a press release out and then hope people watch the news. Right? That's not how it should work. It's got to use the technology that people use the most to get information.
Absolutely. So how soon after a threat is detected should communication with the public begin in your experience?
Well, as soon as you can. So, for example, if there's a threat that we have information that someone is bringing a bomb to an area, or maybe they're bringing guns and there might be an active shooter situation, for example, as soon as you know that and you can definitively say, that's a pretty credible threat, then the information can go out as quickly as possible to give people as much time as they can to be able to react. To either shelter in place or to get away from the area if they safely can. You've probably been through active shooter training where you barricade yourself in the room if the shooter's already in the building. The more time you give people, the better their chances of avoiding being caught in the incident. This is no different for like a natural hazard. So you probably have seen NOAA and FEMA. Days before a hurricane hits, they start saying, hey, this hurricane is coming. It's 7 days out. We think it's going to hit this area, so you should start getting ready. You should be prepared to evacuate. You should board up your house and protect it. And so the faster we can do that and the more accurate we can be with information, the better it's going to be, where we can prevent injuries and deaths and mitigate some of the effects of that natural hazard. Notice I don't call it a natural disaster because natural hazards they're going to happen whether humans are there or not. It's a disaster when it impacts humans.
So do you think that students, faculty, parents of those students should receive different messaging when a hazard occurs or when it's happening?
Well, it depends on what the issue is. So, for example, if there's an active shooter, right? There should be messaging that's directed to people that's right in the location where that active shooter is or might soon be, right? And of course, that's going to be a little bit different than what you're sending to parents, right? I think that the messaging that's going to go to parents should be very quick and it should basically say there is an active shooter incident going on at this school or this building or this location. We've already given information to the students to evacuate or whatever, shelter in place. For parents, we ask that you not come rushing to the school, but we're going to have a reunification center and tell them where to go, because, you know, if they all just rush back to the school, they might get involved in the active shooter incident themselves and put themselves at harm. So it really depends on the situation.
Absolutely. So how can students like me and people and parents of students that are on college campuses really push forward what you are trying to put into place with Strat3 and FEMA and other companies?
Well, number one is to learn as much as you can about disasters and crisis. Second is learn about the communication aspects of this, because maybe you can become part of the system there at your university to help communicate. And part of that communication isn't just the crisis communication; it's communication beforehand to prepare people. So if you help prepare your fellow students to be ready for an active shooter, to be ready if flooding happens, to be ready if there's an earthquake, lives are going to be saved, and I think that's a really cool thing. So I would really recommend that you look into everything from ready.gov, which is a website. It has a lot of stuff on it. You can look into Weather Nation, which is something that NOAA and the National Weather Service put out. There's a lot of other emergency management type protocols that are out there. I know the FBI has active shooter training, DHS. If you go on dhs.gov, they have training and information about what to do during active shooter. The other thing now is cybersecurity. Most people don't think that's a big deal, but it actually is. The more you know about protecting yourself online, the better you're going to be. A lot of students are finding that their information is being stolen, their identities are stolen, or people can hack into your cameras and turn on your phone camera when you don't even know it. Could be very compromising. So there's a lot of things that you can do, and there's a lot of great opportunities out there. And I just say, take the opportunities that you can. It really depends. I mean, not everyone's going to be able to do this. A lot of people are very busy, but for those like yourself who are interested, there's great opportunities out there, and I highly encourage you to be part of it.
Thank you so much. I just want to say on behalf of students like me and parents, we're putting our safety first and finding ways to really keep our country together in terms of that. So thank you so much, and I really appreciate you talking with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And, again, if there's anything I can do in the future, I'm going to continue working with ZeroNow, and I'm looking forward to helping put things up on the ZeroNow website. And so people should be looking at that website as it starts to grow and more resources are put up there. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you for interviewing me.
Thank you.